Do you know the longest hockey game ever played? Or the largest score, the most goals scored in a hockey game? Or how about the annual hockey game played every year where the loser goes home with the trophy? To answers to these and many more, stay tuned for this week's Strange as It Seems episode based on this folder I found recently in the archives entitled Ice Hockey. Welcome back. This is Jeff Hicks, curator of the Strange as It Seems archives and grandnephew of John Hicks, who created Strange as It Seems back in the late 1920s. For this week's episode, we'll skate into the facts and figures, all the fascinating stories we found in this folder on ice hockey in the Hicks family archives. Doing a little preliminary research for this episode, I found out that hockey wasn't really invented by one person, but a lot of ancient stick and ball games that kind of gathered together. Apparently, it became codified in Canada. The first organized indoor game was played in Montreal on March 3rd, 1875. It was at the Victoria Skating Rink, featuring James Creighton and McGill students who established the early rules. I guess they used a flat piece of wood as the first puck, although there is some rumor that the earliest hockey puck was made of frozen cow dung, which I guess means the first player to slap it probably set a record for the world's coldest bull shot. And kicking off as we typically do in the era of John Hicks, who created Strange as It Seems in 1928, one of the first facts I came across here was because a hockey team could muster only 7 players instead of the usual 9, a change was made in the rules which lasted 30 years. So apparently right in the early days, R.F. Smith, who drew up the first hockey rules, says, "In 1886, I founded the Montreal MAA and sent out our entry to the Carnival Committee, and when the contest time neared, I found we only had 7 men in our entire club who could play hockey. The rules still provided 9 men to a side, so I went to the committee and successfully pleaded with them to reduce the size of a team to 7 men, a rule that remained in force for the next 25 or 30 years until the modern era with 6 players to a side. Strange as it seems." And at the top of the episode, I teased what was the longest hockey game ever played. And here's a handwritten letter from April 4th, 1933 from Toronto, Canada, to John Hicks. "Dear Sir, I'm enclosing full details of a professional hockey game played in Toronto, Canada, April 3rd, 1933, between the Toronto Maple Leafs, 1931 and 32 world champions, and the Boston Bruins for the National Hockey League Championship for 1932-33. And we even have the clipping that was attached with the letter from April 4th from the Mail and Empire, Toronto, Canada. But apparently the Toronto Maple Leafs, as the fact is here in Strange as It Seems, played the Boston Bruins for 2 hours, 44 minutes, and 46 seconds to win the regulation game. And it looks like I see here too, I've got a Time magazine from April 1933, a story, but the smallest player on the Toronto Maple Leafs hockey team is their reserve right wing, 137-pound Ken Dorati. In a way, his insignificant appearance is an advantage. Opposing defensemen find it hard to be prepared for the sudden bursts of speeds his short legs can achieve. A bigger man is a better target for a body check. Last fortnight, little Dorati, at the end of his first year in Major League Hockey, did something that should ensure him more. He ended an historically long game, 2 hours, 44 minutes, and 46 seconds, by scoring the goal against the Boston Bruins that put the Maple Leafs in the final playoffs for the Stanley Cup. Strange as it seems. And checking our good friends over at Google to see if that is the longest hockey game. It does say in Google's quick search here that the longest hockey game ever played in the NHL apparently was in 1936 when the Detroit Red Wings beat the Montreal Maroons 1-0 in the 6th overtime. That was the 176 minutes and 30 seconds, although I do find here Another John Hicks fact that goes back to 1886, and apparently in 1886, an ice hockey game went 4 hours and 20 minutes. This was Montreal versus Quebec. So shortly after the, invention of the indoor game, Montreal versus Quebec, 2 hours the first day. The regulation game ended up tied, and 2 hours and 20 minutes on the second day, and Montreal won. You know, people say that hockey's really all about toughness, and I guess they're right. My brother-in-law plays hockey, and one time I slipped and fell in their kitchen, and the whole family turned to me and said, 2 minutes for tripping. No sympathy whatsoever. And as for the question of the most goals or the largest score in a hockey game, it looks like, again, according to Google, it really depends on the league. But in the NHL, the record for the most combined goals is 21. That happened in 2 different games. The Edmonton Oilers won 12-9 over the Chicago Blackhawks. This was back in '85. And the Montreal Canadiens 14-7 win against the Toronto St. Patrick's. This goes back to 1920. However, in week 104 of Strange As It Seems, the largest hockey score on record was 30-0. This is in Houghton, Michigan. The Michigan College of Mining and Technology, I guess we're getting out of pro hockey here, but defeated the traveling team from Eagle River, Wisconsin. Eagle River apparently only got 1 shot at goal, while Tech had 61 shots at goal to get to the score, 30-0. Strange as it seems. And here's a fact that hockey aficionados may already know, but the puck that's used in playing hockey is actually frozen before the game. It keeps it from bouncing freakishly off the player's sticks, which otherwise would detract from the rhythm of the game. And I have here from Olympia Sports, awesome letter here with the Olympia Incorporated letterhead, May 16th, 1944. You are correct in reply to your letter of May 12th. It is the general practice to put 4 or 5 pucks in a bucket of ice about 30 minutes before each hockey game and freeze them. And the purpose is destroy some of the resiliency of the puck, which causes it to bounce freakishly out off the playing surface and off the player's sticks, thus destroying much of the rhythmic attractiveness of the game. And here's a fascinating hockey fact about Red Ward, the Brantford hockey goalie. Apparently he caught fire when the puck struck a pack of matches in his hip pocket in 1938, New Haven, Connecticut. Fire started in the pocket of Red Ward, the goalie. And we have a couple of, another one of those identical twins like we had in the episode recently on track and field. But here's Bill and Jim Sloan. I love this. The photograph here is Bill and or Jim Sloan. Can't tell which one is which, but they co-captained Princeton's undefeated 1939 freshman hockey team. They both were the team leading scorers, and here's a letter from 1940 from Princeton University on Princeton letterhead, confirming the fact that the Sloan twins, William and James, were elected co-captains of Princeton's undefeated freshman hockey team at the end of the season last year, and they previously had been co-captains in their senior year of the Phillips Exeter Academy Sextet. At Princeton, Jim was the leading team scorer with Bill second. And another extraordinary hockey player here, corroborated with a letter from the Lamar's Tennis Club from June 16th of 1930. But it was about Charles Von Berg of Lamar's, Iowa. Apparently he played in the state championship hockey game at the age of 64. Strange as it seems. What do you call a weird guy that always hangs around a hockey team? The goalie. And here's an amazing fact about a extraordinary goalie. Frankie Brimsek played for the Boston Bruins, did not allow a single score in 220 minutes of play. That's 5 games in 2 weeks. And a great photo here of Frankie Brimsek from the January 9th, 1939 Life magazine. Although apparently the longest a hockey goalie has ever gone without allowing a goal in the NHL is actually 460 minutes and 49 seconds, a record held by Alec Cannell of the Ottawa Senators, and this streak was set during the 1927-28 season. And moving on to another famous, incredible hockey player, Cyclone Taylor. He was a famous hockey player on the Vancouver Millionaires, led his league in successive scoring for 3 successive years. This is from 1913 to 1915. And an awesome article here from Madison Square Garden National Hockey League official program, 1933-34 season, but the Listowel Thunderbolt. Who is the greatest forward in the history of hockey, at least at this point? This time-worn question has a habit of bobbing up at the most unexpected moment. Many a hot debate has started over the point, and while it is acknowledged that it's impossible for anyone to state definitively that any individual player was the greatest of them all, everyone seems to be doing it, and in hockey, most people seem to agree on Fred Cyclone Taylor. I love this too. Here's another, the continuation of the program here. In 1915-1916, Taylor netted 35 points in 18 games. The next season found him in a slump, and he finished 9th with 29 points, but he came right back the following 2 campaigns to once more lead the sharpshooters with 32 goals and 11 assists in 1917-18 and 36 points the next season. Pressure of business forced Taylor to retire the following fall, his position with the Canadian Immigration Service at Vancouver taking up more and more of his time. He never returned again to the active list, but on different occasions put on the skates in later years for a workout and never failed to startle the youngsters with his blinding speed and crafty stick handling. Amazing. Cyclone Taylor. Not to be outdone, however, here's another extraordinary. Frank McGee, the one-eyed hockey player. Ottawa Silver 7. He scored 4 unassisted goals once in 64 seconds. He was known as Paul Bunyan of the ice. Ever hear of Furious Frank McGee? If you haven't, don't confess to it. As an old-timer up in Montreal writes Mark Belterre in the Detroit News, to men who have followed hockey since the turn of the century, there never was a player to match this one-eyed Paul Bunyan of the ice. He lived a storybook life, this finely bred Ottawa youth, and he died a storybook death, killed in action in the World War at 35, again, before the World War II even happened. Into his short life was crammed enough incidents to make him legendary. His left eye was put out in a hockey game at the age of 17. After that, he was under constant pressure from his family to quit. Leave hockey to the Roughnecks, they urged. You're a gentleman. But hockey was life itself to Frank, and he stayed with the smashing 7-man game at this point. It was played in 1900. There were no restrictions on board checking. Forward passing was barred. Fascinating. The man who carried the puck was more a target than he is today. McGee at center carried the puck more than any of his teammates. Always a superb player, he reached his peak in the years from 1903 to 1905 while with the famous Ottawa Silver 7, so called because they so often won the Stanley Cup and all the other silverware in sight. They were the best team in the National Amateur League, forerunner of the President National League, and Frank McGee was their best man. But you don't have to take the oldster's word. The records prove it. In one cup game, as the fact is, against Queen's University in 1903, McGee scored 4 unassisted goals in 64 seconds, an all-time record. He set another unapproached mark in 1905, scoring 14 goals in a single Stanley Cup game against Dawson City. Extraordinary. The one-eyed Frank McGee. What do the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Titanic have in common? They both look good until they hit the ice. And for the final few facts, we'll Fast forward to the Elsie Hicks era, which started in 1948. My grandfather, Ernest Hicks, who had taken over the comic strip from his brother John, he actually died in a plane crash in 1948. My grandma, Elsie, took it over, but she's got the Pee Wee League here. This one's pretty cool. A young ice hockey group of Tacoma, Washington consists of 4 teams of 15 players each. All of the boys are under 12 years of age, and the youngest player is 7. And we've got a corroborating letter here from the Tacoma Chamber of Commerce and quite a few of the... this is a cool one, too. I love this. The This Week magazine, Los Angeles Times, has got a pretty intense picture of the kids on ice. Hockey's Pee Wee League. And here's an interesting fact from a question asked at the top of the episode. But apparently there's the Silver Trophy. It's the annual ice hockey game between the U.S. Military Academy and the Royal Military College of Canada. And here's a photograph included of the Silver Trophy. Kind of an amazing story. In the climatic game of the season, Army and Royal Military College of Canada revived their colorful hockey series at Smith Rink this coming Saturday night. The series, which started in 1923, was disrupted after the 1942 game. This is now in the 1950s here, game apparently due to World War II. The series has been called the most sporting athletic event in the world. Although both teams have always played an aggressive and spirited game, a player has never been sent to the penalty box for committing a foul. And then, too, the Silver Cup, which was intended for the winner, is perennially presented to the loser. With one game still to be played, Army has a won and loss record of 7-6 this season, but apparently the U.S. military never won the game. It always was won. We have here a list of all the games from 1923 through 1937. Canada wins every year. The trophy stays with the losers in the U.S. as a gesture of courtesy. And for the final fact here on ice hockey, also from the era of Elsie Hicks, is the great Gordon Howe, known as Gordie Howe. He was a forward with the Detroit Red Wings hockey team. He recovered from serious injuries and delicate brain surgery to become the first player to lead the National League in points for 3 consecutive years. Everybody's heard of the great Gordie Howe, and we've got a letter here from the Detroit Hockey Club, the Red Wings, on the Red Wings letterhead. I love these treasures here in the archives. Howe is the first player to lead the National League in points for 3 consecutive seasons. He was injured severely in March 1950 and then set a new point record the following season, equaled it in 1952, and broke his own record in 1953. We're enclosing a press book, including a personal sketch on Howe. I don't see that. Not sure where that went. But a photograph, and here's a photograph of the young and amazing Gordie Howe. Strange as it seems. Well, that wraps up this week's episode. Mine from the Strange as it Seems archives. This folder here on ice hockey. If you like content like this, stories of the strange and unusual, old comic strips, I have radio shows, old 1930s film shorts as well. Check out the archives here and stay tuned. Hit the bell to subscribe. Leave a comment, like, follow. I'll be back next week with another story, another series of stories, if you will. As my great uncle John Hicks said in his first book in 1928, the author launches this book of the curious in nature and humankind on the vast sea of public opinion, with the hope that it will fulfill its mission to entertain and acquaint its readers with some of the marvels of the world in which we live.